people who join me a lot of the time together. And so I want to introduce a friend, a colleague, a family member, and a wonderful rabbi, Rabbi Susie Hennison Moskowitz. And so, yes, we do have the same last name because Susie is married to Rabbi Stephen Moskowitz and has been a rabbi at her current pulpit at Temple Beth Torah in Melville, New York. Was invested as invested was
No, ordained.
no, installed. Well,
Oh,
or I was going to say
installed.
she was
Oh,
installed at
I was
Temple Beth
installed by
Torah.
the first time by a very good rabbi.
Yes, thank you. I was blessed to install her as rabbi October 29th, 1999 at Temple Beth Torah when she became the associate rabbi there. Before she was the rabbi educator there, and now she's a senior rabbi at Temple Beth Torah. So a long career at that synagogue and ordained as a rabbi in 1991. So welcome, Susie.
Hi, good morning.
Thank
I've
you for
actually
being
been
with
at
us.
Beth Torah for 25 years. I think you did the installation when I switched from educator to associate rabbi.
1999,
No,
October 20,
19, 2005, I think, 2006.
1999.
You did not, Rabbi Goldman. Mark Goldman did it, the
We
first
did it
one.
together. 1990, October
You
29th,
did?
1999.
But there was another one you came in because I remember Ed Walker thought you were the funniest rabbi ever.
Very wise man, obviously. Well, let's
I
move
think
on.
you talked about plumbing and installation.
So we will, yes, refrigerators that we install usually. So we'll talk about this in the Facebook chat afterwards and confirm the date. But let's talk about some things of
Okay.
meat and of value that we can learn from as well. We lost you. Oh, there you are, Susie.
Sorry.
So Susie and I were talking the other day about our rabbinate and some of the things that are very similar and why we love being rabbis, but things that are different. And Susie's been a rabbi her entire career in New York, and very different than me, my entire career being a Midwestern rabbi. So that's an interesting thing. But also, Susie being a woman has a different perspective too. And look, I was ordained, half my classmates were women. And I think it was similar when you came out of rabbinical school too. But I think there are things that are definitely different than the obvious, but for a woman being a rabbi still today. But can you talk about that today, but also, you're almost 30 years in the rabbinate now and the changes you've seen?
Um, well, I am in a unique situation, not singularly unique, but our clergy team is all women, the cantor and the associate rabbi and myself, and we have a really good time with it. Our congregation is so supportive. I think people were worried, but once they saw us in action, it was fine. And we'd all been there for a little while when it happened. Our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Gelman, went emeritus, and that left the three of us, and nobody wanted to get rid of any one of us. So it all really worked out beautifully. But I think there's a change. I think for me personally, I've been really fortunate. I've had very supportive colleagues, male and female, all along the way, who have uh, championed women being rabbis, and that helps pave the way when the senior rabbi, uh, male or female, says, "This is what we're going to do. This is who it is." Nope, she's going to do your funeral. She's not. No, we're not your funeral, but the funeral for your family. No, you can't have the male rabbi just because you want the male rabbi. This is a rabbi of the congregation, and people saying things like that made a big difference. It's nobody really says anymore. Oh, I've never kissed a rabbi before. I used to get that a lot. I've been blessed. I have heard from other colleagues much more difficult routes that they've taken with some sexual harassment, things um, really strange stories, but true that people have been so um, taken advantage of the fact that they're female or put emphasis on things. We actually wear robes at our congregation for services, not on Zoom when we're at home, but on the Bima. And part of me thinks it's old fashioned. Like you and I both grew up classical reform with the robes, and I even grew up with the miters at my synagogue where people wear those hats. But when I wear the robe, it doesn't matter if my skirt's too short, or in the old days, if my pantyhose had a run in them, or I mean, I wouldn't necessarily wear a skirt that's too short, but when you're sitting on the bima and crossing things you have to worry about. So the robe makes me the rabbi. and I really like that. But there's still, you know,
Yeah, no, it's interesting because that's the reason why we wear robes too, because Cantor being a woman. And I always think back to at times my parents, as progressive and open minded as they might be, they would never comment on the rabbi's clothing. Rabbi Susan Talvey came to St. Louis in, it must have been the early 80s, right? One of the first women rabbis. And I mean, look, we're about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the ordination of women now, right?
right.
So, and Rabbi Talvi is a wonderful rabbi, but I know they noticed what she was wearing and would comment, "Oh, that's a lovely dress." They would never say anything about the rabbi wearing probably the same suit every week. And so I think of that, and in our circumstances, it equalizes us on the bima, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Also, when the twins were so little and they'd spit up on me as I left the house, the robe would be a quick cover up. So that was really a good thing too.
I'm glad they stopped spitting up on you. Um, I do think there's issues though. There's still pay equity issues,
Mhm.
women's rights issues. There are still things that we need to fight for real, true equality and balance in the rabbinate for all our colleagues, for our gay and lesbian colleagues, still don't always have an easy time of it. Um, more women are doing part-time rabbinic work, and any kind of part-time work doesn't pay as well, doesn't have the benefits that full-time work has. So I've been blessed, but I know that my colleagues still need advocacy.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I think what we've learned these past couple of years in our country, in our world, around Me Too, those challenges exist even in the rabbinate. As good as we might think it might be, and as progressive as we might be, the reality, and we've argued about why there's something called the Women's Rabbinic Network, WRN, which is your collegiality, your group of women rabbis who get together. There's no men's rabbinic network. There's just Essential Conference of American Rabbis that you and me are both a part of. And
Mhm.
the question is, why is that necessary? And I think the answer is because there's certain issues that need to be brought to the forefront that you can advocate for and then help us understand more too.
Yeah, I agree. And it's fun. I mean, I love the Women's Rabbinic Network. I was able to join, I finished my thesis in March. I literally handed it in and got in the car with a friend, and we drove to Chicago for the Women's Rabbinic Network conference in 1991. So I've been a member my whole rabbinate, and it is a place of such strength and support and collegiality and safe space for women. Um, in a really beautiful way. And I'm a fan. I'm always torn. I know the whole world, the fraternity and sororities on college campuses are under a lot of attack, rightly so, in many ways. And I know this doesn't feel like an un-PC thing to say, but I know it is to some degree. I still made some of my best friends in sorority. That doesn't mean the institution's a good doing everything right, and I think there are issues, and I've been quite concerned about the whole purpose is finding a group that looks just like you,
Right.
and um, that's not what I think the world should be today.
Right. And the haves and the have nots, the ones who are accepted, the ones who are excluded, all of those challenges. Speaking of which, it takes me to a powerful conversation you and me had that I'd love for you to share as well, because we were talking about books we're reading right now. And I always like when some of my guests are able to share something that's been interesting they've been reading. And you mentioned Ta-Nehisi Coates' new book, his fiction book, right? But I referenced Between the World and Me, his book, Coates' book, which I powerful books that I read years ago that really about systemic racism before the summer it came to light for so many of us, right? And the realities of what we've experienced versus others. So I'll use that as your softball as a lead in to the book you were reading and recommending, but then to me, but then also your own experience because of him coming from Baltimore.
So I was recommending Water Dancer, which is his book about slavery in the United States that so far is excellent. Um, but so I was reading Between the World and Me, and it turns out he's about 10 years younger than me, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he grew up 10 miles, less than maybe 5 miles from me. And we went to the same mall. He referenced going to Security Square Mall, and that's the mall we went to when I was growing up. And it really was eye opening that he and I could grow up in the same world, yet parallel universes. And I knew nothing of the difficulties that it was growing up black in middle class Baltimore, in and the issues that he faced. It made me reflect on going to school, and I was in a lot of honors classes, and uh, we had a couple black friends from school and from the neighborhood too, but a handful. Um, and he was living in this whole other world where he had to, I don't know if they were having the talk back in the 80s, but whatever the equivalent of the driving talk was.
Yeah, when you share that, because his book and his voice is like coming from another world, right? But his own journey and going to Howard University and the opportunities that he had or that he made in his life and the people he met along the way and stuff, and of course as a brilliant man with such a mind, and what
Mhm.
literature did for him and opened up, but still living in that environment so powerful that that was 5 miles away from you, right?
Yeah.
And we think it's a different world, and it's not. And I think that's been the reality of America right now for us, and it's bringing us together and understanding the challenges that we still face,
I
right?
was
And
teaching confirmation class yesterday, and the kids, well, they kind of threw me a softball. Said, "Do you think Long Island is integrated or something like that?" And it's considered one of the most segregated places in the country. That it's so district. And two of the kids in the class had written papers on redlining, which as I just came to light to me that this isn't an accidental phenomenon on Long Island. It was
right,
orchestrated. It was created so that there were districts people could live in and people couldn't. Some of it's affinity groups, like the same Catholics who lived together in Brooklyn and the same Jews who lived together in Brooklyn and the Italians who lived together in Brooklyn all moved out to the suburbs and moved near their friends. Some of it's that, but it goes a lot deeper than that, the way we've structured Long Island. And it's something, I've been trying to work on and bringing more together and through the congregation. A lot of our social action work is how do we connect with other communities and create sustaining long-term friendships, not just one time we did got together and did a service, but the same people
flash in
come
the pan,
here and we go to them. And I think you do a lot of that as well. I think how do we
right,
make long-term relationships so that it's a relationship, not just an act of charity on anybody's
right,
part.
right. No, I think that's it. We do these flash in the pan things when there's a crisis or a need or an awareness, and then it sort of peters out, and we forget about that relationship. What would you say? What do you find most meaningful in your rabbinate?
I think it's still why I went into the rabbinate. That I had said, oh, maybe I'll be a psychologist. And this isn't necessarily a true representation of psychologists, but this was my 20-year-old representation that I didn't want to deal with people who were in crisis all the time. Um, and I do still love that I get to work with people. I could be in the nursery school in the morning and then do a study group with 80-year-olds in the congregation, and then go teach Hebrew school in the afternoon and meet with a bar mitzvah family, and then have a adult b'nai mitzvah class or a committee meeting. That I get to work with people of every age range on a really regular basis. And that came from being in college and being like, this seems so strange. Everybody in my world is 18 to 22. This isn't the real world. I mean, there were professors and things like that, but my general life. The unexpected meaning that I think I found is that you get to be there for people when they lose someone. And when you sit and do an intake before a funeral, you learn about people in a way that almost never happens. Even if you knew them personally, you
Right,
might not learn about them in this way. So I get to learn about their childhood. I get to learn about their quirks. I get to learn about what made them beloved and special, what made them annoying and crazy. Like you get to learn a little bit of everything. And sometimes I think that experience is even more important than the next day when we actually have the public funeral.
I agree. I so appreciate those times. First of all, I love what you said, but I also appreciate I love when it's someone I knew, but I learned things I had no idea about in their lives, right? And that sort of bring it, like sort of help me understand the whole gestalt of the person's life and why they were that way, and appreciating of that too. I sometimes say I think I became a rabbi because it's still a way I haven't had to choose a career, because we do so many different things all the time, right? And are juggling that. And I
Yeah.
love the variety of what we get to do as well. Well, let's, as we come to a wrap up on our time together, can you teach us, share with us, text in our tradition, a Jewish tradition, that you find most powerful, that guides you in your rabbinate, in your life?
I'm going to take two because I did get a prep on this one and then I had another one. So I love Simcha Bunham's teaching that in each pocket there's a slip of paper. And on the one says, for me, for my sake, the whole world was created. And the other says, we are but dust and ashes. So on days when you're feeling low, you can reach into your pocket and pull out, for my sake, the world was created. And on days when you're feeling arrogant and you're feeling full of yourself, you reach in and you pull out the other one that reminds us, I am but dust and ashes. So I love that. And then at Shabbat morning, when I bless the congregation at the end, I say, Bruchim atem b'voachem, Bruchim atem b'tzeitchem. May you be, and I translate it, may you be blessed in your coming together, that God has blessed us with, um, that God has blessed us with this event, this moment, that we're alive, that we're able to be here, that we could celebrate together. And then on the other hand, on when you go out, that we have an obligation now to do God's will, to do mitzvot, to do tikkun olam, and repair the world. That if we could start each day with that sense of gratitude and that sense of mission and purpose, that blessing really captures how wonderful our lives would be if we could do that.
Awesome. Like it. Well, let me just say, I'm really glad you didn't become a psychologist. You chose to be a rabbi and start rabbinical school in 1990 so that you'd meet my brother.
I met him in 19. I started rabbinical school in 1989.
Oh,
Sorry, you
sorry,
started rabbinical school in 1990.
86, 86, 86,
86.
1986. Sorry, right. You got that you met. But I'm also glad that you're a rabbi, because you're a great rabbi as well. And people are blessed to have you in their
Your
community as a
brother-in-law.
leader. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I'm glad all worked together.
I
So
think
to our friend,
he's going to be upset that we didn't talk more about him. The other Rabbi Moskowitz going to be a little upset.
well, he's had his time on Monday Morning Musings. As a matter of fact, now he does his own Monday Morning Musings, thanks to the guidance that I've been able to give him, as I often do in
Inspiration.
life. Right?
Inspiration.
So it's very kind of me, I know. Hey, a couple things. If you haven't signed up for our trip to Israel on Thursday, we're returning again with Benny and Rabbi Daniel at 12 o'clock. It's a Zoom class, and you can be a part of that. I forgot where they're traveling to this week, but it should be wonderful. And Friday night, a 6:30 service, and look forward to seeing you at that as well. And Shabbat morning, Tish. If you've never been a part of our Torah study, the 30 or so people who join every week, it's really a beautiful way to go one line at a time and talk about our Parsha Shavua, but delve into Torah a little more deeply. So we love that conversation with us, Rabbi. So please jump on board. Thank you, Rabbi Susie Moskowitz, for being a part of our Monday Morning Musings today. Love
Thank
our
you.
time
This was a lot
together.
of fun.
Okay, and thanks, Brian, for behind the scenes helping out today, as always. Take care, everyone. Have a good week.